Ask the Mayor. Your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth, Bob Hedlund, questions about the town and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now, Ask the Mayor with Bob Hedlund.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Mayor. To quickly recap and catch up from our last episode, Bob had just married Daenerys, and together they're marching towards Winterfell to defend. He has no idea what we're talking about. Game of Thrones is coming on, Robert, this
Never
Sunday.
watched it.
You're not a fan? Big doings, I am a fan. I
don't know if I'm a fan. I don't know whether or not I'm a fan. I've never seen it.
I recommend it. I think it's hysterical. I think it's action-packed. It's fun. Any fans out there? Oh, yeah, Ryan and I got Ryan and I on the same page.
It's not up against Ask the Mayor on TV.
I know a lot of viewers are torn on a weekly basis.
Jim, and just add something before we start here. It's amazing. It's like you flipped a switch and your mood suddenly changed.
Yes, well, we're on camera.
The camera went on and you smiled. This is the most worst mood I've ever seen you arrive at.
It's an accurate statement. Since you brought it up, I would like to reflect on the reason why I was
towards the end.
Well, no, let's talk about it now. I came from South Weymouth. It took me 21 minutes to get from my house in South Weymouth to the mayor's office. 20 minutes. There's 4 lights on Pleasant Street.
Well, you shouldn't have gone up Great Hill and stopped before you got here.
There are 4 lights on Pleasant Street, and none of them are synchronized. And I stood and waited, or sat and waited.
Synchronized?
Yeah, synchronized. Are you familiar with synchronized? Are you familiar with synchronizing the light patterns?
He wants them synchronized for when he's driving down Pleasant Street.
At any point would have been. I was 0 for 4. I mean, come on.
Of course they're not synchronized. This isn't like a grid in Manhattan.
Well, that's my background. Those are my expectations.
They're timed based on what the usage is at that particular intersection.
To me, you are the Mayor Koch, the Ed Koch of this town, and that's why those are my models.
Robert Moses.
My expectation. Ooh, I like that.
You know who he was?
Of course, one of the great
The only reason you knew that is because you lived in New York for a while.
Well, that's an accurate statement. It's true. But remember, Ed Koch's famous line was, which I encourage you to adopt, and when I run against you in 2044, I knew my big line is, how am I doing? Remember, Ed Koch's big line was, how am I doing?
I'm just glad you didn't bring up Menino with the urban mechanic thing, right? the suburban mechanic.
Ooh, well, now
right.
That's a reference I'm not familiar with.
Questions.
Do you want to explain suburban mechanic?
No.
Okay, there we go. All right, listen, we're moving right into the questions here at the great town of Weymouth. It's the spring. The Red Sox had their home opener yesterday. Better weather is around us, and everybody's feeling pretty good.
It was 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago. Thank you very much. All right, well, Robert, of course, the buzz in town, what everybody's talking about. The big issue of the moment certainly is the funding of the new Chapman School. If you don't mind, I'm going to start off by reading an assortment of questions that people have sent in relative to the big vote that's coming up on, when's our big vote?
April 30th.
April 30th, so it's around the corner. And of course,
3 days, by the way, after our community cleanup day, which is the reason for our prop today. This is a photo taken with the garden club that adopts Abigail Adams Green. I don't know if this is going to be up in time on the 27th, hopefully. Yes. But we would encourage everyone that might want to go out and participate in this great community event, help clean up Weymouth, nice spring cleanup. Call the mayor's office, 781-340-5012, or you can partner with different community groups that are going to be out there, the different civic organizations, et cetera. And we have a nice event after at O'Sullivan Park, hot dogs, pizza, and camaraderie.
It's a great day for the town. And the work is tangible. You notice that, immediately after the cleanup, it's noticeable. And everybody does a great job. And the Weymouth Garden Club has been involved for I don't even know how long, but a lot of good members there. Needless to say, doing great work. All right, so a couple big things on the schedule as we move forward. But Bob, if you don't mind, I'm going to stay focused on the Chapman School construction for right now, because certainly it is top of mind and there is a buzz around town. So Bob, the first question is, the new Chapman School is approximately $163 million from what we understand. Why is it so expensive, and where does it rank when it's compared to other school projects? That doesn't sound like a big number, actually, from me being around the block, but is that a big number?
I think it's a big number.
It is
a big number, yeah. And the reason it's a big number is based on our needs, this is going to be the second largest middle school in the state. And,
no kidding.
And we pursued options. Obviously, we looked at, having 2 middle schools. That was not viable in this community based on what's available for land and et cetera.
I didn't realize that. There was a consideration of 2 actual separate buildings,
Well,
huh?
the state required us to go through a process where we look at every option. They make us look at that. They
Wow.
make us look at renovating the existing building. There's a whole range of procedures they made us go through, hoops that we have to jump through. And this was the conclusion of that very lengthy study. As you know, we've been at this for 4 years. The previous administration started this process for very good reason. But in terms of just zeroing in on cost, if you look at this project by any yardstick and compare it to what's been happening around the state with school construction, right now, for instance, there are 22 school building projects in this cycle being funded by the state.
Across the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, and if you do a comparison there, whether it be per student cost based on how many students the building is going to house, or even if you look at it from a square footage cost, which in the construction world would be, a way to go about that really, is probably the best yardstick. We're at the lower end on a square footage cost, so this is an economical building by those measurements. We are at roughly $524 a square foot. Excuse me, that whole average of the 22 projects is $524 a square foot. Chapman's at about $508.
Oh, so the statewide average is 524, but
Of
you
the
guys are coming in a
22
little...
projects in this cycle, yes.
Wow.
So we're in the
So you guys
lower
coming-
end.
Excellent.
I think we're second from the bottom in terms of the cost per square foot of those 22 projects.
Were there a lot of competitors when you put the bid out there? Are there a lot of companies big enough to handle? I mean, do you get 50 bids, or do you really only get 2 bids? Is there one company that's kind of building them all, or is it pretty competitive? Is there more out there than I would think?
No, well, it's competitive for that
Okay,
kind of
huh?
work. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, especially when you're talking $500 a square foot, right?
Yeah, well,
In
sure.
the construction
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
that unfortunately, school buildings are relatively expensive, compared to other types of construction.
Right. But plenty of
It was a
contenders, huh?
competitive process on for the design team, all that. We're happy with how the process has gone. We've been commended by the state, by the School Building Assistance Program for our management plan, for our green technology that's going into this building. And just as of last night, we got word that they have upped the reimbursement another $3.3 million.
Oh, great.
So we're on the upper level of the percentage of state reimbursement for this project too, based on our performance thus far.
How does news like that come in? Is that what was that enhancement based on? Additional funding that they got at the state
There's
level?
criteria on how we're meeting benchmarks and how we're going about the process, basically.
Wow. Awesome. So good stuff all the way around. And I
For-
guess
for the efficiencies that we've undertaken throughout the process.
when you think of major commercial building construction, 163 million doesn't sound like a huge number, but obviously in the context of the town and our budget, it's a much bigger number, I guess, than I would have realized, huh?
The overall cost?
Yeah, that 163.
This is the most significant building project the town's ever undertaken.
Oh,
sure.
no, does this actually cost more than the construction of the high school?
Yeah, this is housing much more students than that, so.
Wow.
Now,
And would be-
remember, that was a renovation plus addition.
Oh,
This
okay,
is-
good point. Total
And there's
construction.
other costs associated with this because of the remediation, the demolition. So this is a big project.
And what did you say, it's going to be the top 3?
And you're
building-
talking, what, 20 years ago on that project now, right? 18,
Is it that old already?
2004, so I'm off a
Wow.
little bit, but 16
Yeah,
years.
so it's 1919, so.
So obviously,
go
construction
15,
costs have
yeah.
gone up in 16 years.
Yep.
You know.
And what did you say, it's going to be one of the top 3 largest schools of its
I think the
kind?
second largest middle school in the state at that point, yeah.
Holy smokes, who would have thought we had that many students?
So,
All right,
nearly 1,500 students.
so.
And one thing, Jim, that's interesting too, even though it's going to house considerably more students than what Chapman houses now with its 2 grades, we're using the same footprint, so there'll be much denser student population based on the square footage too.
Wow, so 163 million certainly is a formidable sum, but in context, it's...
In the current world
doing okay.
of school construction, this is not a Taj Mahal. Generally, over time, we've gotten a little bit much more extravagant overall, if I will, use that word, compared to what was being built 50 years ago.
Well,
Okay?
planetariums and so on and so forth added in.
Well, there's no features like that in this building.
Right.
But I'm just saying that mandates and requirements and how the perception of how we teach kids has changed over the last 50, 75 years. You don't just build a square box anymore and house them in a classroom. You've got technology, infrastructure needs. You've got things that now are what the accepted practices in the education system that we have to accommodate in this building, plus the 500 square foot
Sure.
cost.
When I was at Immaculate Conception right down the road, the eraser not only cleaned the board, but it was a weapon for them to use to, fire at us when we misbehave. So I'm sure they have other resources now that they use to accommodate bad children.
We're saving on abacuses and rulers.
All right, well, listen, let's keep moving forward here. Let's keep moving forward. Again, the theme of the early part of this show is questions that have been written in regarding the construction of Chapman. So let's go back to the next one. What is the impact on the students during the construction of Chapman? And what has been planned for that? So how are the kids going to be affected when there's, the facility that they're currently attending is being taken down?
So, as people who follow this issue know and follow all things school related, and I'm sure you do,
Yeah,
as you know, during the economic downturn a decade ago, the school had to go through a grade realignment at that time that by all standards doesn't make sense. And are you all right?
I'm hoping I'm not on camera. No, I'm having a liner issue on my suit coat. Go ahead. Just got it back from the dry cleaner, too.
So, as you know, the grade
We matched, by the way, today, Bob. I think the only time we may have matched.
The grade alignment issue has been a problem over the decade, and having this many transitions for our students, leaving grammar school at 4th grade, and then going into a pool, town-wide pool, if you will, in 5th and 6th grade, and then the transition again, 7th and 8th. It's not good. This allows us to address that, obviously, and what we're going to be doing with this new space opening up, you'll have 5th graders remaining. Once this building is complete, 5th graders will remain at their grammar school, at their primary school. There'll only be the transition to middle school, then to high school, as opposed to the 2 intermediate transitions that we have to undertake now. Adams will go to be converted to a grammar school to allow that to happen. So you asked during the transition. So during the transition,
I had no idea. I didn't really figure into the fact that there was so much movement.
So aside
here.
from addressing the
Great
problems
question.
with the building, this project allows us to address the questions involved with the grade alignment that we have here, and that was a big driver, obviously, behind this. The transition period that we're talking about, the 2-year transition period, kids will stay at their existing grammar school into 5th grade now during this period.
Oh, okay.
And 8th graders will be temporarily moved up to the high school. 7th and 6th graders will be temporarily housed at Adams during the process. So.
Wow, that's going to be a lot of changes, huh? But all these current buildings can accommodate the extra load?
So kids that are in currently in what, third? Kids that are currently in, will be going into 4th grade, will be the first class into the new building, should the voters approve this.
And that's the current plan, huh? Mm-hmm. Whew, lots of movement, lots of things going on. Okay, Bob, let's keep on this theme if you don't mind. Have other towns that have constructed new schools seen increases in property values or other benefits once a new school has been built? That's a big claim, obviously, to fund it.
Yeah, I don't have specific data that would confirm that. I think, there may be, but I mean, we have anecdotal things that would suggest that.
Right.
I mean, clearly, when people look at purchasing a home, looking at the school system is a big part of that, whether you have kids or not. If you have kids, obviously you're concerned, and you're going to look at what the school system is like and the school facilities and overall performance. If you don't have kids and you're looking at it, you also consider that. Many people will consider that because they're going to think about, well, if I want to resell my home, that's obviously going to be a consideration for people that I might want to sell my home to. So it clearly is that. I mean, one little tidbit of anecdotal information, a realtor who just sold a home, and it was an astounding sale price here in Weymouth. It blew my mind.
On the water or just in the center of town? Or?
No, it was in East Weymouth. It was an $800,000 sale.
I don't think I've ever heard of an $800,000 sale in our town.
The house had some amenities, but it, from the curb, it didn't.
Who would have thunk it?
I want to relatively new, small subdivision, a street, I think, with maybe 4 or 5 houses. Nice.
So a new subdivision, new construction?
Yeah, probably in the last decade.
Yeah.
But anyway, the realtor told me that that was one of the considerations that the folks had, was looking at the school system here and anticipated. They actually mentioned this. They did research and they narrowed their search down to Plymouth and Weymouth and the library. Believe it or not, they said walking trails, which I don't know which ones they were referring to, but walking trails, maybe Great Esker or something, the library, and the potential for the new school. So in that case, it impacted whoever sold the house. Whoever sold that house is popping a bottle of champagne.
Over in the corner? Was it Mary? Well, listen, I think that's one of the oldest kind of tenets in the books, is the quality of the facilities is connected to the quality of the delivery of the education. I think people have been, banging that drum forever. So it would seem logical that, the quality of education would be enhanced by the quality of the facilities and structures. And I think that is an important reason. Mayor, would you back that up when people are looking to buy a home? And Weymouth is renowned for being a great place to, be a first-time homeowner and buyer. So I can't see how that could hurt us on any level. But there's no real hard and fast evidence that people draw on when it comes to these statistics at the end of the day.
And by the way, people who looked at, when we're talking about costs, because this has been a moving target number, because we knew that we weren't going to get a final reimbursement rate from the state when we put the initial numbers out. We took, in all of our presentations, a very conservative approach. And we made it very clear that the numbers we were putting out there for public dissemination were worst case scenario numbers. So now if you had looked at your Chapman calculator on our website, where you can just punch in your address and it'll tell you what the impact is to you as a taxpayer, I would suggest you go back, because we're going to update that based on the news last night.
Oh, great. So everybody's rate's going to go down, obviously.
Correct. Yeah. And we also believe that the way interest rates are looking, we went with a conservative interest rate. We think we're going to do better as we get closer here, provided there's no major changes by the Fed or in interest rates. And so I would suggest people, before the vote, go back to that calculator and look again. And we're not done with the state. There's a potential that we could get even a slightly larger reimbursement when the final number is arrived at, which should be in the next, I'd say by the 20th at the latest of April. So there'll be that 10-day period before the vote where we'll have a definitive number for people to look at.
And Bob,
but it's not going to go up. It's going to go down, if anything.
In a conversation I had with someone not so long ago regarding the temporary levy that we're talking about here, I want to make sure, and I'm going to ask you again, it is absolutely 100% there's a finite period to this bond. It's not like the Mass Pike where they said we were only going to be funding them for a period of time, and they just kept extending that out.
There's people throwing a lot of stuff out to obfuscate this, ridiculous things. But no, there's been no. It's physically, legally impossible. Has never happened since Proposition 2.5's been in place. This is a finite. It'll be in the ballot summary. It'll tell you.
An end.
Yeah, and it looks like, because of the favorable interest rates that are out there, we're shooting for the 20-year finite period.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's been misinformation out there on that.
Okay.
So that's a complete non-starter if anyone tries to tell you that.
Well, and I think it's easy to get confused with, as I did in the prior episode, the bond override. It wasn't a bond override, with the last override that we.
That was a permanent operational override, right?
And I think some of these things are connected.
This is a completely different animal.
And it's important to make that distinction. Hey, these questions are phenomenal. Needless to say, we want to encourage people to keep the questions coming to askmayorbob@gmail.com. Askmayorbob@gmail.com.
They may not want to write any more Chapman questions, because the next taping will be after the vote.
Well, they
unless there's postscript type questions.
Yeah, and the teachers union, I would imagine, is in
actually,
favor
if people
of this,
do have questions, I will throw this out. anewchapman.org. A lot of information there, and you can get questions answered there pretty quickly.
But with this, I just threw out there, the teachers union has to be in favor of this, I would imagine, right?
The Weymouth Educational Association came out a couple weeks ago in favor of this, yes.
Now, will this mean more personnel down there as well at this facility? Will we be hiring more
Great
teachers?
question. No.
Okay.
So operational costs, we think, are going to be helped by this project. Chapman consumes 14% of our town's maintenance costs. It is a huge energy waster, so we expect that we'll be in a better position on some of the operational costs.
Oh, phenomenal. All right.
And that building right now, I mean, much of it's unused. It can't be used, or in some cases isn't used. It's unwieldy.
It's scary.
42 exterior doors in that place. 42.
42
And
access points.
Just based on security alone, that's something hard to manage.
Well, I don't know if it's Ryan or Jeff who's dropping in all the footage when in the past episodes when we take the tour of the high school. Holy baloney. Looks like a haunted house at this point, obviously.
It's rough. I mean, it was a poor design, and it's not in maintenance function. The town has done pretty good. I mean, I say this all the time, but I get the point of reference of having represented 8 communities. I was in schools all the time. A grammar school I went to in another community, the town actually renovated that school significantly and added on to that school after I left, so it wasn't that long ago. And they were just shot down by the state on an application to replace the school. And that's a wealthy town that has the luxury of seeking school building projects. Every debt exclusion that they've sought at town meeting gets approved. And I don't think they're as judicious as we have been. We've never sought in the history of the town a debt exclusion override. We've never sought one.
Right.
And I can tell you that we're getting longer life out of our grammar schools and other communities around us who have replaced most of theirs in recent years. And they're maintained well, and they're extending those life. And we don't have any plans to do any grammar schools anytime soon. There's nothing on the drawing board for that. The reason that this school is being done was not because of poor maintenance, but primarily because of the way this building was designed. It was flawed from the get-go.
It looked good from 100 feet away, that's for sure. Didn't it win design awards when it first came around?
Yeah.
But lift up the hood and check the cover, as we used to do at Hedlund Motors. There's not much in there, it sounds like. Well, Bob, actually, on that note, when's the last time this town built a new grammar school? I can't, nothing's coming top of mind.
Good question.
71.
Oh, is that?
Which one?
Which one?
Wessagusset.
Wessagusset. 71.
Wow. Specifically for Mary's entry point into the educational system. Well, Bob, speaking of these buildings, because they can have a lot of different usages, someone else wrote in, beside the school itself, are there town-wide resources being built into the project that everyone can access and take advantage of?
So that's a good question. One of the things that when I came in and this process was underway, we hadn't yet received payment. By the way, your friends at L-Star funded the study, which was $1 million, the whole feasibility study, as part of the mitigation before they went bye-bye.
Right.
So that happened after we took office, but this planning was underway when I came into office. But one of the things I said from the get-go, I said we have to take a very conservative approach, A, because that's what I want, and I think given the fact that this town's never approved a debt exclusion, has never been asked for a debt exclusion, but also has never approved an override. It's a fiscally conservative town. We understand that. I understand that. I'm in sync with that. And I didn't want a lot of bells and whistles on this thing that would serve as kind of a rallying cry for this thing to be perceived as a Taj Mahal or something.
Right.
And it pretty much isn't. So the school building committee was diligent in that effort in keeping this functional, keeping this cost effective. That's borne out by our square foot construction costs. So we weren't seeking to have a lot of unneeded amenities, but it does have some.
I hope so.
That are very simple to incorporate into this. There'll be things, I'd say the highlight obviously would be the Performing Arts Center, which you and I used to call an auditorium. But that is something that's state-of-the-art, will be used by our high school drama. So they'll use that.
Great.
It'll be used not just by middle school folks, but as a town-wide resource.
Will that auditorium be, in fact, the biggest one in town when the school's built? Will it be bigger than the current high schools?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
But
good.
also, like
We need a space like
we've
that.
got an award-winning drama team.
Yeah, no, I
drama
know
club.
every year they do great.
And they've had problems hosting events there because it didn't meet the specs at the high school and here. So that'll address that. It'll be a great meeting place for the community for different events.
Excellent. Bob, I'm going to cut you off just because I know the producers are telling us we're running out of time, and I do have
Yeah,
one
I'll
more
answer that
question.
real quick. So
Okay.
there'll be outdoor stuff. If you live in the neighborhood, there'll be multi-purpose
There's plenty of
court.
outdoor stuff, I'm sure.
Typical stuff you'll see at a playground, walking path around the perimeter, which is not anything really costly.
No fields like down at Legion or Loveland.
No, there's no
like
room
that.
for that,
Yeah,
Jim.
okay, right. I've seen
but
that.
there will
yeah.
be building services, health services, not only to deal with the school, but could be utilized by the community as a facility for wraparound health service and stuff.
Well, this episode's gone by really quick, and these are always the important questions. I've got one more for you, Bob. We've got about 2 minutes here. If I could put you to the test here, and this is not going to be the easiest one probably to answer. The first part certainly will be, do you support the debt exclusion for the new Chapman Middle School? I'm going to ask you to hold your thought on that. Do you personally support the debt exclusion for the new Chapman Middle School? And secondly, what is your plan if it fails?
Do I support the debt exclusion? Let's see.
I'm going to put you down for a yes.
I think I've been quoted in the newspapers. We did a special Ask the Mayor devoted to it. This is the second really one that it turns out is devoted to it because we get so many
Thanks
questions.
for all these great questions, everybody.
I've been vocal on social media. My administration, I appointed the construction committee.
So you're waffling on it.
We've taken an official position as an administration, and I am the mayor last time I checked. And I went out. I didn't join the building committee chairman at every public outreach session
Who is
we
Ted,
did.
right? It's Ted Langle?
My chief of staff, exactly. But I participated and spoke at numerous community groups, North Weymouth Civic, an event we held for the seniors at the Whipple. I think
I
it's
saw
been
you
pretty.
with the can out in front of the Stop and Shop, looking to raise some money. The early fundraising.
Actually, I was at Shaw's this past Saturday for a little while with the group that was there. So
there you go.
I think I've been pretty visible, and we would like to have the support of all of our elected officials. The council has been supportive.
Is there anybody that's demonstrably anti?
There's been maybe one or two electeds that have been not providing an answer to that, so that questioner should probably reach out to the other electeds in town, but I think I've been pretty visible on it. And what was the second? Is there a plan?
What's plan B? Yeah.
So-
What is your plan if it fails?
So plan B, in a way there is no plan B, but there is a plan B. There's no way it would have to be another decade before we could start the process, or close to a decade. Well, not to start the process, but it would be about 4 or 5 years before we could even start the process again, which would put us a decade away from getting really into the MSBA program again. So there's 50 plus million out the window.
50 of that 160.
Or 50 plus,
50,
yeah.
Okay.
And then who knows what construction costs are going to be a
Right,
decade
yeah.
out. So there's that lost opportunity. And then we still, as part of the assessment and study that we had to do to participate in the program, $100 million in needs were identified. So basically, and this is why this thing is really makes sense to go the route we're going. We got town portion of 90-something million to replace the school when you supplement that with what the state's given us. And by the way, we're all paying for that because that's a penny out of the sales tax that funds the program. Or we have $100 million that we will have to foot to fix an already dysfunctional building. Will that $100 million be spent immediately? No, but we'll be mandated to bring this thing up to code, to fix mechanicals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be a huge impact to our capital budget. It'll continue to be a drain on our operating budget, which is why this project has to happen. And it's not something I take great delight in trying to put this thing forward. I really didn't want to have to deal with this issue, but it hasn't been dealt with in a long time. And again, the process started under the previous administration. We weren't going to disrupt that process. It was very early in the process, but to have been selected by MSBA to get in this program makes this thing important to pursue.
And what percentage of the voters need to approve this, Bob, for this to go through? Is it 51%?
Yeah, there's no supermajority.
Is that-
It's
okay,
51%,
So
yeah.
51%, we're moving forward. Listen, I'm in the town with you. It's not going to benefit my kids are a little younger, but I don't see how we cannot move forward with this. I mean, it seems like it's overdue. Thank you, Jeff. Honestly, one of the benefits of this show, without that footage, I wouldn't have bought it. You drive by that school, it looks pretty decent, but then, boy, some of that interior footage, it's compelling. And it seems like the time is right.
It's funny though, some of the strongest advocates we've had out there, this argument, all my kids are older, it's the kids who in recent years have gone through the building are some of the strongest and loudest advocates we have.
I bet. Well, listen, it sounds like we're going to have to wrap up this episode of Ask the Mayor. We want to remind everybody, as always, please send in the questions to AskMayorBob@gmail.com. Bob, any other final thoughts as we conclude this very Chapman-centered...
I just had a light bulb go off in my head though.
Go ahead.
When you're ready to close, can I pick the show?
We are moving forward. I was thinking about one as well. Go ahead. It's your turn. You wrap it up. How are we concluding this episode?
Stay tuned for Room 222.
That's exactly the one I was thinking of, dude. That's exactly the one I was thinking of. That's phenomenal. All right, well, listen, thanks again for tuning in. Hey, get out there and vote. Whatever your opinion is, make sure you made it known. Please get out and vote.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.